The station wagon wasn't always a family car. Let's uncover its transformation from utility.
That memory is likely steeped in the warm tones of faux wood paneling, the crackling sound of an AM divided by FM radio, and the chaotic family fights with your siblings over who would get the coveted back seat, that iconic rear-facing third row, where you could make faces at the drivers behind you, feeling like you were in your own private, mobile world. If you're like me, you probably had no idea these automotive titans were in any kind of danger back then. Station wagons seemed as timeless and deeply ingrained in American culture as baseball, apple pie, and summer barbecues. So, what happened? How did we go from a staggering 62 models to virtually zero American-made station wagons in just 2 decades? That, my friends, is the captivating mystery we're here to unravel today. The dawn of a new era, from depot hack to station wagon. Our story begins in a completely different America, in the early 1900s, a time when the rhythmic sound of the locomotive was the primary soundtrack of long-distance travel. And it is from this railroad-centric world that the station wagon derives its name. These early vehicles were, literally, wagons, designed to service train stations. Initially, they were known as depot hacks, working tirelessly in railroad depots as hacks, a colloquial term for taxicabs. Allow me to paint a more vivid picture for you. Imagine stepping off a train in 1910, weary from the journey, surrounded by steam and noise, with a veritable mountain of luggage, heavy leather trunks, and hat boxes. In this pre-Uber, pre-modern taxi era, you needed a vehicle that could accommodate not only you and your group, but also all your belongings. Enter the depot hack. These machines weren't elegant. They were rugged, utilitarian vehicles, often with rough-hewn wooden bodies bolted to a sturdy truck chassis. They featured simple benches, open sides covered by canvas curtains for weather protection, and a far from smooth ride. They were work vehicles, built for durability, not comfort, used primarily by hotels and resorts to transport their wealthy clientele. The Ford Model T, the seed of an idea. The first significant leap forward came, unsurprisingly, from the visionary mind of Henry Ford. In 1910, for a mere $700, Ford began selling bare Model T chassis to a host of independent manufacturers. These smaller companies, often local carriage and wagon builders, would then meticulously craft and build wooden wagon bodies on top of Ford's mechanical foundation. It's crucial to understand that Ford wasn't building station wagons at this point. They were simply providing the reliable and affordable bones. A vibrant cottage industry of skilled artisans and small coach-building companies sprung up across the nation, each crafting their own unique wooden bodies. To put this into perspective, in 1909, there were an incredible 551 American car manufacturers. Can you even fathom that today, when we are dominated by just a handful of automotive giants? The metamorphosis from the purely functional depot hack to the more family-oriented station wagon occurred sometime between 1923 and 1929. The exact moment is lost to history, but by 1929, the name had firmly taken root. This was the year the first station wagon from one of the American Big Three automakers was introduced, signaling a shift from a purely commercial vehicle to something more. The Ford Model A, the first official wagon. When the Ford Model A station wagon debuted in 1929, it marked a pivotal moment. The term station wagon was now official, and the concept of a multi-purpose family vehicle was beginning to enter the mainstream consciousness. However, these early Woodies were still very much a niche product. They were expensive, requiring intensive, skilled labor to produce. The wooden bodies were works of art, often constructed from fine hardwoods like maple, birch, and ash, using complex joinery techniques borrowed from fine furniture making. The real revolution was still on the horizon, one that would trade artistry for accessibility. The 1935 Chevrolet Carryall Suburban, a steel revolution. The game truly changed in 1935 when Chevrolet introduced something radical, an all-steel station wagon. The 1935 Chevrolet Carryall Suburban was a harbinger of the future, a vehicle built for mass production and durability. No more wood, well, for the most part. Interestingly, this innovation didn't immediately set the market on fire. The public had grown fond of the wooden aesthetic. It gave the wagons an air of expense, of prestige, connecting them to the grand tradition of wooden boats and stately homes. In the 1930s and early 1940s, these woody wagons commanded a higher price than their standard car counterparts and were a clear symbol of status. Ford, not one to be outdone by its rival, doubled down on the Woody. In 1936, they opened a dedicated wagon manufacturing plant in Iron Mountain, Michigan. This was no ordinary factory. Located in the state's Upper Peninsula, it utilized raw materials from Ford's own vast timber operations near Lake Superior. Yes, you read that right. Ford literally owned the forest that supplied the wood for their wagons. From this plant, they shipped complete wooden wagon bodies to assembly plants all across North America. However, the beloved Woody wagon harbored a dark secret. They were a nightmare to maintain. The beautiful wood required constant, meticulous care. It had to be regularly sanded and varnished, inspected for rot and termites, and the dozens of joints had to be constantly checked for tightness as the wood swelled and contracted with the weather. Leaks were a constant battle. Imagine having to refinish your car with the same care you would give a piece of fine antique furniture every single year. It was a labor of love that many were not willing to undertake. The post-war boom and the golden age. The real paradigm shift occurred in the optimistic, booming aftermath of World War II. In 1946, a company synonymous with rugged utility, Willys Overland, the makers of the iconic Jeep, introduced a truly revolutionary vehicle that would pave the way for the wagon's golden age. The 1946 Willys Jeep station wagon, the first all-steel family wagon. The 1946 Willys Jeep station wagon was the first family-sized all-steel production wagon. It was tough, practical, and relatively affordable. While it cleverly sported a faux woody look painted on its sides to appeal to the public's lingering affection for the classic aesthetic, its structure was entirely steel. This was a monumental development. By 1949, the fate of the true Woody was sealed. The 1949 Plymouth Suburban, the nail in the Woody's coffin. Plymouth's introduction of the all-steel Suburban in 1949 was the final nail in the coffin for the authentic wooden wagon. It was sleek, stylish, and, most importantly, it didn't require its owner to be a part-time woodworker. While some manufacturers continued to use wood trim as a design element into the mid-1950s, it was purely cosmetic. From that point on, the wood was nothing more than vinyl graphics, a perfect, if somewhat sad, metaphor for the changing face of a nation moving toward convenience and mass production. Now, we arrive at the heart of our story, the golden age of the station wagon. To truly grasp why these vehicles became such an integral part of the American landscape, you have to understand the seismic shifts that were occurring in post-war America. The G.I. Bill fueled a massive expansion of home ownership, leading to the birth of the suburbs, like the famous Levittowns. The new interstate highway system made long-distance travel faster and easier than ever. And, of course, the baby boom meant families were getting bigger. Suddenly, millions of American families needed a vehicle that could handle this new reality. A growing family, longer trips, and all the stuff that came with the new, aspirational American lifestyle. The 1950 seconds were an explosion of growth and prosperity, and the station wagon was right there for the ride. Its market share skyrocketed from less than 3% of U.S. production car volume in 1950 to an incredible 17% by the end of the decade. In just 10 years, the wagon transformed from a niche product into a mainstream phenomenon, with nearly 1 in every 5 cars sold being a station wagon. In 1958, a remarkable milestone was reached. The top-selling body style in the entire Plymouth lineup was the station wagon. Not the sedan, not the coupe, the wagon. What made these wagons of the golden era so special? For starters, they were gargantuan. We're talking about true land yachts. These weren't just cars. They were rolling extensions of the family living room, built with a sense of boundless optimism and scale. The 1968 Ford Country Squire, the king of the land yachts. Take the 1968 Ford Country Squire, for example. This magnificent beast stretched over 218 inches in length. That's more than 18 feet. To give you some modern context, a brand new Chevrolet Tahoe is only about 210 inches long. That's right, your massive modern SUV is smaller than your grandpa's old station wagon. The Country Squire wasn't just big, It was a suburban limousine, often equipped with plush carpeting, power everything, and enough chrome to signal success to the entire neighborhood. But it was about so much more than just sheer size. These wagons were a potent symbol of the American dream. After the hardships of the Great Depression and World War II, Americans wanted it all, and the station wagon was the vehicle that promised to deliver. It was the original multi-purpose vehicle capable of embracing all the facets of their expanding horizons. A large family, a house in the suburbs, hobbies, recreation, and a touch of prestige. The sheer variety of wagons available was mind-boggling. You had 2-door and 4-door models, wagons with pillars and pillarless hardtops, and seating for 6, 8, or even 9 passengers. The tailgates alone were masterpieces of engineering. Ford had the magic door gate, which could either swing out like a door or fold down like a tailgate. GM went even further, inventing the ingenious clamshell design on their full-size wagons, where the glass retracted into the roof and the gate retracted into the floor, creating a massive, unobstructed opening at the touch of a button. The 1,960 seconds ushered in even more innovation and style. This was the era of the Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, with its distinctive raised roof and celestial skylights. Panoramic roofs may seem like a modern luxury, but Buick and Oldsmobile were putting glass panels in their wagon roofs way back in the 60s, giving kids in the back a unique view of the passing world. You had compact wagons like the Ford Falcon for young families, versatile midsize options like the Chevrolet Chevelle, and, of course, the full-size behemoths like the Mercury Colony Park that could comfortably seat a small army. The cultural impact of these vehicles cannot be overstated. In the 1,960 seconds and early 1,970 seconds, if you were a middle-class American family, a station wagon was practically a mandatory part of the uniform. They were the mobile command centers for family life, handling everything from soccer practice and grocery runs to cross-country camping trips to see the Grand Canyon. The marketing was pure genius, tapping directly into the aspirations of the era. Ford's top-of-the-line Country Squire evoked images of landed gentry, while Chrysler's Town & Country promised a vehicle that was equally at home on the city streets as it was on a weekend getaway. And that iconic wood grain trim? Even though it was all D-knock vinyl by the 60 seconds, people absolutely adored it. It was a statement, a declaration that you had made it, more powerful than any chrome badge. And let's not forget about performance. These wagons weren't just for hauling groceries. By the late 1,960 seconds, you could option your family wagon with a monstrous big block V8 engine that would put many sports cars to shame. We're talking about engines exceeding 400 cubic inches in some cases. Sure, they might have only gotten 8 miles per gallon, but gasoline was cheap, and America was riding a wave of unprecedented optimism. What could possibly go wrong? The beginning of the end. The cracks begin to show. Now, we need to delve into the numbers, and I promise to make this as painless as possible, because this is where the plot thickens. On the surface, the station wagon business was booming through the early 1,970 seconds. Sales were robust, profits were healthy, and Detroit was churning out wagons at a dizzying pace. But beneath this veneer of success, there were ominous warning signs. Think of it this way. The fundamental principle of any successful business is to keep your costs low and your prices high. The problem with station wagons was that they were inherently expensive to manufacture. They required a longer frame, a larger roof, more glass, extra seats, complex tailgate mechanisms, and a heavy-duty suspension system. Yet, manufacturers couldn't charge a significantly higher premium for them compared to their sedan counterparts. In 1970, when wagon sales reached their zenith, the Big Three were making a decent profit on each unit, but it wasn't a windfall. The profit margins on sedans were actually better because they were simpler and cheaper to build. As long as the sales volume remained high, the business model was sustainable. But that was about to change dramatically and violently. In October 1973, the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, OAPEC, declared a total oil embargo. For those who didn't live through it, it's difficult to convey the sheer chaos and national anxiety that ensued. The price of oil skyrocketed by nearly 300%, and the impact on American life was immediate and brutal. Motorists were faced with impossibly long lines at gas stations, sometimes waiting for hours just to purchase a limited amount of fuel. Gas rationing stamps were issued, the national speed limit was lowered to 55 miles per hour, and a palpable sense of vulnerability swept the nation. Station wagons, with their voracious appetites for gasoline, were particularly vulnerable. That once beloved symbol of the American dream sitting in the driveway suddenly looked like a financial anchor, a gas-guzzling relic of a more naive time. The sales figures tell a stark story. After peaking in 1970, wagon sales began a steady decline, and by 1974 and 1975, they had plummeted. The decline was precipitous, shocking the industry. Chrysler, reading the writing on the wall, made the drastic decision to completely discontinue their full-size wagons in 1978. To make matters worse, the auto industry was also grappling with new, stringent emission standards introduced in 1972. The mighty V8 engines that powered these land yachts had to be neutered with primitive emissions equipment, which choked their power and made them even less fuel efficient. The station wagon was in deep trouble, but the gas crisis and emission standards were just the opening salvos. The real killer was waiting in the wings. The final blows, the minivan and the SUV. And it came from a most unexpected source: Chrysler, the very company that had just abandoned the full-size wagon market. Under the leadership of the legendary Lee Iacocca, the struggling automaker needed a game changer, something revolutionary, and in 1984, they delivered it. The Dodge Caravan and Plymouth Voyager, the minivan revolution. The Dodge Caravan and Plymouth Voyager didn't just change the game, they created a whole new one. The minivan was a stroke of genius. It offered more interior space and a flat floor, something a wagon with its drivetrain hump could never have, but in a shorter, more maneuverable package that fit easily in a standard garage. The sliding doors were a godsend for parents trying to load children in tight parking lots. The higher command seating position provided better visibility. And because they were built on car platforms, they offered a more comfortable ride than traditional vans. The minivan was, in essence, a better, more thoughtfully designed station wagon. But there was another, more subtle factor at play: image. By the 1,980 seconds, the station wagon had become deeply, tragically uncool. It was the car of your parents, a rolling symbol of boring suburban conformity. The baby boomers who had grown up in the back of a country squire wanted something different, something that declared their independence from the previous generation. The minivan was fresh, modern, and just different enough to feel like a choice, not an obligation. But the minivan was just the first punch. The knockout blow came from an entirely different direction, and it was wearing hiking boots. I'm talking about the SUV revolution. The Jeep Cherokee XJ, the birth of the modern SUV. While truck-based SUVs like the Suburban, Wagoneer, and Bronco had been around for a while, the 1984 Jeep Cherokee XJ was a different breed. It was smaller, more refined, built with a modern unibody construction, and critically, it was marketed as a lifestyle vehicle. You weren't just buying a utility vehicle, you were buying into an image of rugged adventure, personal freedom, and go-anywhere capability, even if anywhere was just the mall. It tapped into a deep-seated American desire for individualism and strength. This was followed by a wave of other game-changing SUVs: the Toyota 4Runner in 1984, the Nissan Pathfinder in 1986, and the behemoth that would truly seal the wagon's fate, the Ford Explorer in 1990. The Explorer was a masterclass in marketing, selling an off-road fantasy to millions of suburbanites. The psychology was brilliant. The station wagon felt communal and domestic. The SUV felt personal and adventurous. It made drivers feel safe, powerful, like the king of the road, towering over lesser sedans and, yes, wagons. Each new SUV that hit the market took another significant bite out of the dwindling station wagon sales. By the early 1990 seconds, the writing was not just on the wall, it was in giant, flashing neon lights. The American station wagon was on life support. The collapse was swift and total. By 2004, only 26 wagon models were available in the US, and by 2016, that number had dwindled to a mere 8. The final years were a sad spectacle. The Ford Taurus wagon and others, the last of a dying breed. The Ford Taurus wagon, a solid and popular car for years, was discontinued in 2005, followed by the Focus wagon in 2008. GM, the last holdout for the traditional full-size wagon, finally threw in the towel on the Caprice and Roadmaster in 1996. To add insult to injury, many of these last-gasp wagons were simply rebadged versions of each other, a testament to the lack of investment and innovation in the segment. A perfect storm of factors conspired to kill the station wagon. The CAFE corporate average fuel economy standards, ironically, played a significant role. Trucks and SUVs were subject to more lenient standards, incentivizing manufacturers to push these less fuel-efficient vehicles over wagons. The profit margins on SUVs were also astronomically higher, and perhaps most frustratingly, Americans convinced themselves that they needed the perceived safety and capability of an SUV, even though the vast majority would never venture off-road. We traded genuine practicality for a perception of ruggedness, and the station wagon paid the ultimate price. The station wagon today, a European niche, and the crossover conundrum. So, where does that leave us today? Believe it or not, the station wagon isn't entirely dead in America. It's more like it's in a medically induced coma, with European doctors working tirelessly to keep it alive. Manufacturers like Audi, Volvo, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz continue to offer station wagons in North America, but they are positioned as premium, high-performance enthusiast vehicles like the Audi RS6 Avant or the Volvo V90. They are beautiful, capable, and incredibly expensive, a far cry from the everyman's family hauler. The term station wagon, it seems, has become taboo, replaced with fancy, focus group-approved names like Avant, Touring, and Estate. The sales figures are sobering. In 2015, station wagons accounted for a minuscule 1.1% of all automotive sales in the US. But here's the delicious irony. The vehicle that killed the station wagon, the SUV, has now morphed into something that is, for all intents and purposes, a lifted station wagon. We call them crossovers. Think about it. A Honda CR-V or a Toyota RAV4 is built on a car platform, has a rear hatch, and seats 5 to 7 people. The only real difference is a few extra inches of ground clearance and some plastic cladding around the wheel wells. We didn't kill the station wagon, we just gave it a growth spurt, a new wardrobe of plastic armor, and a fancy new name. The Subaru Outback, the wagon in disguise. Subaru was the first to crack this code with the Outback. When it launched in 1994, it was essentially a legacy wagon with a lift kit and a clever marketing campaign featuring Paul Hogan. Subaru sold an image of adventure, not domesticity, and it worked spectacularly. The Outback is a perennial bestseller, living proof that Americans will happily buy station wagons, as long as you don't call them that. There have been a few valiant attempts to revive the true station wagon in America. Cadillac gave it a shot with the stunning CTS Sport Wagon, and Buick tried with the excellent Regal Tour X. Both were fantastic cars that were met with a resounding chorus of crickets from the American car-buying public. It seems we've become so accustomed to the high-riding posture of SUVs and crossovers that the idea of a long, low-slung wagon feels alien, a legacy of memories and a call to our community. So, what would it take for the station wagon to make a genuine comeback? Honestly, I believe that ship has sailed for the mass market. Our entire automotive infrastructure, from our parking spaces to our drive-thrus, has been built around the SUV. More importantly, our national self-image has become intertwined with these vehicles. We've convinced ourselves that we need command seating and the ability to ford a river on our way to the grocery store. You know, researching and writing this script has been a deeply personal journey for me. I realized that I never got to experience the golden age of the station wagon firsthand. But I do have vivid memories of seeing those last few survivors roaming the suburban plains, a battle-scarred Taurus wagon, a seemingly immortal Volvo 240. And every time I saw one, it felt like a fleeting glimpse of an endangered species. What made the station wagon so special wasn't its fuel economy or its handling. It was what it represented. It was the ultimate family car from an era when the definition of family was a little more clear-cut. The wagon was where life happened. It was the rolling theater for sibling squabbles, the classroom for learning geography through the license plate game, and the portal to a child's first taste of freedom in that magical, backward-facing third-row seat. We lost something when that rear-facing seat was replaced by headrest-mounted screens. We lost a connection to the world passing by, a shared experience of looking out the same window. These cars were rolling monuments to American optimism, a testament to a time when we weren't afraid to be a little impractical, a little whimsical. We've lost something in the transition to our modern fleet of homogeneous crossovers. We've lost a certain character, a certain personality, and a whole lot of practicality. But the story of the station wagon is also a powerful lesson in how quickly things can change, a reminder that the automotive landscape is in a constant state of flux. And perhaps most importantly, it's a lesson about loss, a connection to a simpler, more optimistic America. And now, I want to turn it over to you, the heart and soul of this channel. I want to hear your stories. Do you remember riding in a station wagon as a child? What model was it? Tell me about the specific smell of the vinyl seats in your family's colony park. Tell me about the time you tried to sleep in the back of a Vista Cruiser on a camping trip. Was it a classic country Squire with the iconic wood paneling, or maybe a sensible and safe Volvo? What do you think was the real reason for the wagon's demise? And here's the big question. Do you miss having real station wagons as an option, or are you perfectly happy with the crossovers and SUVs of today? For those of you who actually owned and loved a wagon, what was that experience like? As we move towards an electric and autonomous future, do you think the wagon's inherent aerodynamic efficiency and practical shape could finally find its moment to shine again? Your stories, your memories, and your opinions are what make this community so special. So please, share them in the comments below. Let's keep the memory of the great American station wagon alive. And if you enjoyed this journey back in time, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next automotive adventure. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.